The lecture hall was silent except for the faint squeak of chalk against the board. My heart pounded as Professor Elena Harper's voice, smooth and commanding, called my name. Lila, stay after class. The words hit like a lightning bolt. Around me, students shuffled out, their laughter and chatter fading into the corridor of Willow Creek University. I sat frozen, my notebook still open to a half-finished sketch of a maple leaf. My mind racing. Why me? Had I messed up my last essay? Or was it something else, something about the way her eyes lingered on me during discussions? Piercing yet warm. Like she saw something I hadn't yet discovered in myself. I was 21, a junior majoring in literature, and painfully aware of my own contradictions. I dressed in oversized sweaters to hide my insecurities but wore bold red lipstick to fake confidence. Professor Harper, though she was different. Late 30s, with jet black hair pulled into a loose bun and a presence that filled the room. She was the kind of woman who made you want to listen, to impress, to unravel her mysteries. Her classes on feminist literature weren't just lessons. They were revelations. Peeling back layers of the world I'd never questioned. And now, here I was, alone with her. Lila, she said, closing the door as the last student left. Her voice softened, but there was an edge to it, like she was holding something back. Your essay on Wolfsmiths. Dalloway, it was brilliant, but it felt unfinished, like you're holding back. She leaned against her desk, arms crossed, her dark eyes studying me. Why? I swallowed hard, my palms sweaty against my jeans. I don't know. I lied. The truth was, I'd poured my heart into that essay too much. Maybe. I'd written about Clarissa Dalloway's longing, her quiet rebellion against a world that caged her, and it felt like I was writing about myself. About the way I'd always felt different. The way I'd catch myself staring too long at girls in high school. The way I'd buried those feelings under layers of denial. Elena, Professor Harper tilted her head, her lips curving into a faint smile. You're not fooling me, she said. There's more to you than you let on. She stepped closer, and I caught the faint scent of her perfume. Something warm like sandalwood. I want to see it. All of it. My breath hitched. Was she talking about my writing or something else? The air between us felt charged, like a storm about to break. I wanted to run, to hide, but her gaze held me in place. I'm not sure I know how, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, as if she'd expected that. Then let's figure it out together, she said. Meet me in my office tomorrow after hours. We'll really talk. She paused, her eyes softening. You're not alone, Lila. That night, I couldn't sleep. Her words echoed in my head. You're not alone. What did she mean? Was she just being a mentor? Or was there something more? I tossed and turned in my tiny dorm room, the glow of streetlights seeping through my window. I thought about my life back in Ohio, where I'd grown up in a small town with parents who loved me but never understood why I seemed so restless, so different. I dated a boy in high school, Jake, because it was what everyone did. But it never felt right. Not like this pull toward Elena, this ache I couldn't name. The next day, I walked across campus to her office, my heart a tangled mess of nerves and anticipation. Willow Creek's campus was a sprawl of red brick buildings and ancient oaks. But her office was a sanctuary, shelves overflowing with books, a worn leather chair, and a window overlooking the quad. She was there, grading papers, her glasses slipping down her nose. Lila, she said, looking up with a smile that made my stomach flip. Come in. Sit. We talked for hours about Wolf, about literature, About the way stories could crack open truths you didn't know you were hiding. But it wasn't just academic. She asked about Mimi dreams, my fears, my life. I told her things I'd never told anyone, how I'd always felt like I was playing a role, how I'd never fit into the neat boxes my hometown expected of me. She listened, really listened, her eyes never leaving mine. You're searching for something, she said finally, leaning back in her chair. Something real. Something that feels like you. I nodded, my throat tight. But what if I don't know what that is? She smiled, a little sad, a little knowing. You will. Give it time. As I left her office, the campus was quiet, the stars bright above the oaks. I felt different, like a door had been opened, one I didn't even know existed. But I also felt the weight of it, the danger of stepping through. Elena was my professor, my mentor. Whatever this was, it wasn't simple. It wasn't safe. Over the next few weeks, our meetings became a routine. I'd stay after class, or visit her office, and we'd talk sometimes about books, sometimes about life. She told me about her own past, growing up in Chicago, coming out as a lesbian in her 20s, the way it cost her family but gave her freedom. Her stories were like a map, guiding me toward something I was still too scared to name. But with every conversation, the air between us grew heavier, charged with something unspoken. One evening, as rain pattered against her office window, she handed me a book. Audre Lorde Sami. Read this, she said. It's about finding yourself, even when the world tells you not to. Her fingers brushed mine as she passed it over, and I froze, my heart hammering. Our eyes met, and for a moment, I thought she might say something that would change everything. But she didn't. Instead, she stepped back, her expression unreadable. See you in class, Lila, she said, her voice steady but soft. I left her office that night, the book clutched to my chest, my mind a storm of questions. What was happening between us? Was I imagining it? Or was there something real, something forbidden, something dangerous, something I wanted more than anything? The rain didn't stop for days. It turned Willow Creek's campus into a maze of puddles and dripping leaves, mirroring the mess inside my head. Every time I saw Elena in class, my chest tightened, like I was holding my breath until she looked at me. Her lectures were electric, weaving poetry and theory into something that felt alive. But it was the moments after class that haunted me, those fleeting seconds when she'd ask me to stay. Her voice low, her eyes searching. I started noticing things, the way her fingers lingered on a book she handed me, the way her smile softened when she said my name. It was dangerous, this pull, but I couldn't stop myself from falling into it. One afternoon, she asked me to help her organize a campus event for Women's History Month. You've got a sharp mind, Lila, she said, leaning against her desk. I could use your perspective. I agreed. Of course, how could I say no? The event was a panel on queer voices in literature, and we spent late nights in her office, drafting plans, surrounded by coffee cups and scattered notes. The more time we spent together, the harder it was to ignore the heat in my chest, the way my skin tingled when she stood too close. Lila, she said one night, as we sat cross-legged on her office floor, paper spread around us. Why do you keep coming back? Her tone was curious, not accusing, but it caught me off guard. I like learning from you, I said, my voice shaky. It was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. I liked the way she made me feel seen, understood, alive. She studied me, her eyes narrowing slightly. You're braver than you think, she said. and I felt my face flush. But be careful. Not everyone will understand this. She gestured vaguely between us, and my heart stopped. Was she acknowledging it? This thing I couldn't name. I wanted to ask her what she meant, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I nodded, and we went back to work, the air thick with things unsaid. The panel was a success, packed with students and faculty. Elena shone, moderating with grace and wit, but I couldn't focus. I kept watching her. The way her hands moved when she spoke, the way her laugh lit up the room. Afterward, a group of us went to a local diner, a cozy place with neon signs and sticky booths. Elena sat across from me, her knee brushing mine under the table. It was an accident, I told myself, but my body didn't believe it. As the night wore on, the others drifted away, leaving just the two of us. The diner was quiet, the jukebox playing a soft ballad. "You did great tonight," she said, her voice warm. "You have a gift for connecting people." "Thanks," I mumbled, stirring my milkshake. "I learned from the best." She laughed, but there was something heavy in it. "Lila, I need to be honest with you," she said, her voice dropping. "I'm your professor. There are rules, boundaries." "But," she hesitated, her fingers tightening around her coffee mug. "I feel something too." My heart leapt, then plummeted. She felt it too. But the way she said it like it was a confession, a burden, made my stomach twist. "What do we do?" I asked, barely audible. She shook her head, her eyes pained. "I don't know." That night, I walked back to my dorm alone, the rain soaking through my jacket. Her words echoed in my head. "I feel something too." It was everything I wanted to hear, but it came with a warning. She was my professor. Older, wiser, untouchable. I was just a student, still figuring out who I was. Yet the thought of her voice, her touch, her everything consumed me. The next few weeks were a blur of stolen moments. A brush of hands in her office, a lingering glance during class, a late-night text about a book that felt like so much more. I started coming out to myself, piece by piece, admitting what I'd always known but never faced. I was falling for her, and it was terrifying. But the world wasn't kind to feelings like ours. I noticed the whispers, the way some students looked at me when I lingered after class. One day, classmate, Sarah, pulled me aside. "Be careful with Harper," she said, her voice low. "People talk. You don't want to be that girl." Her words stung, but they weren't wrong. The university had strict rules about student-professor relationships, and Elena's career could be at stake. I started to pull back, skipping our meetings, avoiding her office. But every time I saw her in class, my resolve crumbled. She noticed. Too, her eyes would find mine, questioning, hurt. One evening, I found a note slipped into my bag. "Meet me at the lake. 8 p.m. The campus lake was secluded, bordered by willows and quiet paths. My heart raced as I walked there, the air cool and heavy with the scent of pine. She was waiting, her silhouette sharp against the water's reflection. "Lila," she said, her voice breaking. "Why are you pulling away?" I wanted to tell her everything, how I was scared, how I didn't know how to navigate this, how I couldn't stop thinking about her. But instead, I stepped closer, my hand finding hers. Her fingers were warm, steady, and for the first time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. Her hand in mine felt like a promise, fragile and electric. The lake rippled under the moonlight, its surface catching the stars as Elena and I stood there, the world holding its breath. "Lila," she whispered. "This could ruin us both." I knew she was right. The university's code of conduct was clear. Relationships between professors and students were forbidden. If anyone found out, Elena could lose her job, her reputation. I could lose my place at Willow Creek, my scholarships, my future. But standing there, her thumb tracing slow circles on my hand, none of that mattered. All I could think was how right it felt, how I'd never wanted anything more. "I don't care," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I can't keep pretending I don't feel this." Her eyes searched mine, torn between fear and something deeper. "You're so young," she said softly. "You have so much ahead of you. I don't want to be the reason you lose that." "You're not," I insisted. "You're the reason I'm finally seeing myself clearly." She let out a shaky breath, then pulled me closer, her arms wrapping around me. It wasn't a kiss, not yet, just a hug, warm and fierce, like she was trying to hold on to something she knew she shouldn't. I buried my face in her shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of sandalwood, and for a moment, the world was just us. But reality crept back in. The next day, I overheard two professors in the hallway, their voices low but sharp. "Harper's getting too close to that student," one said. "It's risky." My stomach dropped. People were noticing. The whispers Sarah had warned me about were growing louder. I tried to focus on my classes, my friends, my life outside of Elena, but it was impossible. Every lecture, every glance from her, pulled me back in. One night, she invited me to her apartment off campus. Small, cozy place filled with books and soft jazz playing in the background. "Just to talk," she said. But we both knew it was more. We sat on her couch, a bottle of wine between us, and talked about everything: her childhood, my dreams, the way the world felt too small for who we were. The conversation drifted, and soon we were closer, her hand resting on my knee. "Lila," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm trying so hard to do the right thing." "Then stop trying," I said, and before I could think, I leaned in and kissed her. It was like the world cracked open. Her lips were soft, hesitant at first, then urgent, like she'd been holding back for too long. My hands found her hair. Her arms pulled me closer, and for those few moments, nothing else existed. But when we pulled apart, her eyes were filled with guilt. "We can't," she said, her voice breaking. "Not like this." I wanted to argue, to tell her it was worth the risk, but the look on her face stopped me. She was scared not just for herself, but for me. "I need time," she said, "to figure out how we do this without hurting you." I left her apartment that night, my heart a mess of hope and fear. The kiss had changed everything, but it also made the stakes clearer. We were playing with fire, and someone was going to get burned. The next few weeks were torture. We kept our distance in public, but in private, we couldn't stay away. Stolen moments in her office, late-night texts, a brush of hands in the library. It was exhilarating and agonizing. I started noticing more eyes on us, more whispers. One day, a dean called Elena into a meeting, and when she came back, her face was pale. "They're watching me," she said, her voice tight. "Someone reported concerns about inappropriate behavior. They didn't name you, but, Lila, we have to be careful." I nodded, but inside, I was raging. Who had the right to judge us? We weren't hurting anyone. But the fear in her eyes was real. and it made me question everything. Was I being selfish? Was I risking her career, her life, for something that might not even last? That night, I went to a campus party to clear my head. The music was loud, the air thick with smoke and laughter. Sarah was there, her eyes narrowing when she saw me. "You're still hanging around Harper, aren't you?" she said, her voice slurred from one too many drinks. "You think you're special, but you're not. She's done this before." Her words hit like a punch. I wanted to dismiss them, to call her jealous, but doubt crept in. Had Elena been with other students? Was I just a phase, a mistake she'd regret? I left the party, my mind spinning, and walked to the lake, the place where we'd first held hands. I sat there for hours, trying to make sense of it all. When I finally texted Elena, my fingers trembled. "We need to talk. Now." Elena met me at the lake just before midnight, her coat pulled tight against the autumn chill. Her face was pale under the moonlight, her eyes searching mine for answers I wasn't sure I could give. "Lila, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with worry. I took a deep breath, the cold air stinging my lungs. "Sarah said you've done this before." I blurted out. "That I'm not special. Is it true?" My voice cracked, betraying the fear I'd been carrying since the party. Elena's expression hardened, then softened. She stepped closer, her hands stuffed in her pockets like she was trying to keep them from reaching for me. "No," she said firmly. "There's never been anyone else. Not like this. She's had her own issues with me. She misread my kindness last year, thought it was something more. I set her straight, but she's never let it go." Relief washed over me, but it was tinged with guilt. I'd let Sarah's words poison my trust. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice small. I'm scared. This feels so big, and I don't know how to handle it." Elena's eyes softened, and she reached out, her hand brushing my cheek. "I'm scared too," she admitted. "But I can't walk away from this. From you." We stood there, the lake lapping softly at the shore, and I felt the weight of her words. This wasn't just a fling, a reckless moment. It was real, and it was terrifying. But before we could say more, headlights flashed across the wet-era campus security car, patrolling the paths. We stepped apart, the moment shattered. "We can't keep doing this," Elena said, her voice low. "Not here. Not like this." She was right, but it didn't make it easier. We agreed to meet less often, to keep things professional until we could figure out a plan. But the distance only made me want her more. I threw myself into my studies, trying to distract myself. But every lecture, every book she recommended, felt like a secret message meant just for me. One evening, I found a letter slipped under my dorm room door. It was from Elena, written in her neat, elegant handwriting. "Lila, I've been offered a visiting professor position at a university in Seattle. It starts next semester. I haven't decided yet, but it could be a way out for both of us. Meet me tomorrow to talk." Seattle. The word hit like a stone. It was a chance for her to escape the scrutiny, the whispers, but it also meant leaving me. I spent the night staring at the ceiling, torn between wanting her to stay and knowing she might have to go. The next day, I went to her office, my heart in my throat. She was packing books into a box, her movements careful, deliberate. "I don't want to leave you," she said before I could speak. "But this job, it's a fresh start. No rules hanging over us. You could come with me. After you graduate, we could figure it out. Her words were a lifeline, but they also felt like a dream too far away, too uncertain. I was still a year from graduation, and the idea of uprooting my life for something so fragile scared me. What if it doesn't work? I asked, my voice trembling. What if we're wrong about this? She crossed the room, her hands framing my face. Then we'll know we tried, she said. But I believe in us. Do you? I wanted to say yes, but fear held me back. Instead, I kissed her, pouring everything I couldn't say into it. It was desperate, hungry, a collision of everything we'd been holding back. When we pulled apart, her eyes were wet. Think about it, she whispered. Please. The weeks that followed were a tightrope. We kept our distance, but the pull between us was undeniable. I started confiding in my best friend, Mia, who'd always known I was different but never pushed me to label it. You're in love with her, aren't you? She said one night, her voice gentle. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. Saying it out loud made it real, but it also made the stakes higher. Meanwhile, the whispers on campus grew louder. A faculty member confronted Elena, asking pointed questions about her favoritism toward me. She brushed it off, but I could see the toll it was taking. One day, I found her in her office, staring out the window, her face drawn. They're investigating me, she said quietly. Someone filed a formal complaint. My heart sank. Who? I don't know, she said. But it doesn't matter. If they find anything, I'm done. I wanted to scream, to find whoever was doing this and make them stop. But all I could do was sit there, holding her hand, feeling helpless. We'll figure it out, I said, echoing her words from months ago. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it. The investigation hung over us like a storm cloud. Elena was called into meetings with the dean, her face growing tighter each time she returned. They have nothing concrete, she told me, but her voice lacked conviction. I could see the fear in her eyes, the weight of everything she stood to lose. I felt like I was drowning. Every day, I walked through campus, hyper-aware of every glance, every whisper. I stopped going to Elena's classes, sitting in the back of other lectures instead, my notebook filled with doodles instead of notes. But avoiding her only made the ache worse. I missed her voice, her laugh, the way she made the world make sense. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I went to her apartment, my hands shaking as I knocked. She opened the door, her hair loose, her eyes tired but warm. Lila, she said, pulling me inside. You shouldn't be here. I don't care, I said, my voice breaking. I can't keep pretending this isn't happening. She pulled me into her arms, and we stood there, holding each other like the world was falling apart. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I never meant for this to hurt you. It's not your fault, I said, but the words felt hollow. We both knew the risks, and we'd walked into them anyway. But as she held me, I realized something. I wasn't just fighting for her. I was fighting for myself, for the person I was finally becoming. The next day, I made a decision. I went to the dean's office and asked to speak privately. My heart pounded as I sat across from Dr. Coleman, a stern woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. I know about the investigation into Professor Harper, I said, my voice steady despite the fear. And I want to set the record straight. Her eyebrows rose, but she nodded. Go on. I told her the truth, not the whole truth. But enough. I said Elena had been a mentor. Nothing more. And that any rumors were baseless. I talked about her teaching, her passion, how she'd inspired me to think critically, to be brave. She's the best professor I've ever had, I said. And she doesn't deserve this. Dear. Coleman listened, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. Thank you, Lila. We'll take your statement into consideration. I left her office, my legs trembling. I didn't know if I'd helped or made things worse, but I had to try. When I told Elena, she looked at me like I'd just given her the world. You didn't have to do that, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Yes, I did, I said. I love you. It was the first time I'd said it, and it hung in the air, heavy and true. Her eyes filled with tears, and she pulled me into a kiss that felt like a vow. I love you too, she whispered against my lips. But love wasn't enough to stop the investigation. A week later, Elena was called into a final meeting. When she came back, her face was pale, her hands shaking. They're suspending me, she said. Pending a full review. They found something. An email. Text. It's not clear. My heart stopped. What does that mean? It means I'm out. At least for now, she said, her voice hollow. And it means you need to stay away from me, Lila. For your own sake. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. No. I'm not leaving you. But she was resolute. You have to, she said. You have a future here. I won't let you throw it away. That night, I walked back to my dorm, the campus dark and quiet. I felt like I'd lost everything, Elena, myself, the life I'd started to imagine. But deep down, I knew she was right. I had to protect myself, even if it meant letting her go. The next few weeks were a blur of pain and routine. I threw myself into my classes, my friends, anything to fill the void. Mia was there, listening, holding me when I cried. You're stronger than you think, she said, echoing Elena's words from so long ago. But the rumors didn't stop. Students whispered about Elena's suspension, about me, about us. I started to feel like I was carrying a scarlet letter, marked by something I couldn't escape. And then, one day, I got a call from Elena. I'm leaving for Seattle, she said, her voice steady but sad. The job's mine if I want it. I think it's the only way. I wanted to beg her to stay, to fight, but I knew it was pointless. Will I see you again? I asked, my voice breaking. I hope so, she said. But you need to live your life, Lila. Be who you are. Unapologetically. Elena left for Seattle the week before winter break. I didn't see her off Colton bear the thought of watching her go. Instead, I sat by the lake, the place where we'd held hands, kissed, dreamed. The water was still, reflecting a gray sky, and I felt like I was staring into my own heart. The campus felt emptier without her. Her classes were reassigned. Her office cleared out. I kept her copy of Zombie on my nightstand, its pages worn from rereading. Every word reminded me of her, of the courage it took to live authentically, even when the world pushed back. I threw myself into my final year at Willow Creek, determined to prove I could move forward. I joined the Campus Queer Alliance, something I'd been too scared to do before. The meetings were a revelation, students like me, sharing their stories, their struggles, their triumphs. I started calling myself a lesbian, first in a whisper, then out loud. Each time, it felt like shedding a weight I'd carried for years. But the pain of losing Elena lingered. We texted sometimes, careful messages about books or life, but it wasn't the same. I missed her voice, her touch, the way she made me feel like I could be anything. I started writing again, pouring my heart into essays and stories, trying to make sense of it all. One day, I got an email from Dar. Coleman. The investigation had concluded, and Elena had been cleared of any wrongdoing. The evidence of a vague email, a misinterpreted text wasn't enough to prove anything. But Elena had already made her choice. Seattle was her fresh start, and I had to respect that. As spring approached, I started applying for internships, looking toward a future I couldn't quite picture. Mia was my rock, dragging me to coffee shops and open mic nights, reminding me to laugh. "You're still you," she said one night, as we sat in a diner, milkshakes between us. "Elena didn't make you. She just helped you see yourself." Her words stuck with me. I'd been so afraid of losing Elena, of losing the person I was with her. But maybe I didn't have to. Maybe I could carry that strength forward, build a life that was mine. That summer, I got an internship at a literary magazine in Boston. It was a chance to start over, to step into the world as the person I was becoming. I packed up my dorm, said goodbye to Willow Creek, and drove east, the road stretching out like a promise. But before I left, I sent Elena a letter, not an email, not a text, but a real letter, handwritten, poured straight from my heart. "Dear Elena, you changed everything. Not just because I love you, but because you showed me who I am. I'm scared, but I'm ready to live my truth, wherever it takes me. Thank you for seeing me, for believing in me. I'll never forget you. Lila." I didn't expect a reply, but a few weeks later, a package arrived at my new apartment in Boston. Inside was a book, Orlando by Virginia Woolf, with a note tucked inside. "Lila, keep writing, keep loving, keep being you. I'm proud of you. E." I held the book to my chest, tears streaming down my face. It wasn't closure. Not exactly. But it was enough. Enough to keep going, to build a life that honored who I was. In Boston, I threw myself into my work, my writing, my community. I went to queer book readings, made new friends, even went on a few dates. Each step felt like a victory, a reclaiming of myself. But Elena was always there, a quiet presence in the back of my mind. A reminder of what it meant to love fiercely, even when it hurt. A year later, I was standing in a Seattle bookstore, my heart pounding. I'd seen a flyer online. Elena Harper, guest speaker, discussing queer narratives in modern literature. I hadn't planned to come, hadn't even known if I could face her. But my feet carried me there, through the crowded streets, into the warm, bookline space. She was at the front, her hair a little longer, her smile just as bright. She spoke with the same passion I remembered, her words weaving stories of love and resistance. I stayed in the back, my hands shoved in my pockets, afraid she'd see me, afraid she wouldn't. When the talk ended, I lingered, debating whether to leave. But then her eyes found mine across the room, and my breath caught. She excused herself from the crowd and walked over, her expression a mix of surprise and something softer, something like home. "Lila," she said, her voice warm. "You came." "I had to," I said, my throat tight. "You look happy." She smiled, a little sad, a little proud. "I am. And you?" "I'm getting there," I said, and it was true. I'd spent the past year building a life I loved, piece by piece. I was writing for the magazine, working on a novel, living openly as myself. But seeing her again brought it all back: the love, the pain, the what if. We walked to a nearby coffee shop, the city alive around us. Over steaming mugs, we caught up for new job, my new life, the ways we'd both grown. There was no bitterness, no regret, just a quiet understanding that we'd changed each other's lives. I never stopped thinking about you, she said, her voice low. But I'm glad you're finding your way. I wouldn't have, without you, I said, and I meant it. Elena hadn't just been my first love. She'd been the spark that lit my path, the courage that pushed me to live authentically. We didn't talk about getting back together. We didn't need to. What we'd had was real, but it belonged to a moment, a season. Now, we were both moving forward, carrying the lessons we'd learned, the love we'd shared. As I walked away from the coffee shop, the Seattle rain soft on my face, I felt a weight lift. I'd loved Elena, and I always would, but I didn't need her to complete me. I was enough messy, brave, and wholly myself. Back in Boston, I kept writing, kept living, kept loving. I met a woman at a poetry reading, her laugh bright and her eyes kind. We went on dates, took it slow, built something new. And every time I doubted myself, I thought of Elena, of the lake, of the way she'd seen me when I couldn't see myself. Love, I realized, wasn't just about holding on. It was about growing, about carrying the people who shape you even as you let them go. Elena had asked me to stay after class, and what she did changed everything, not because we ended up together, but because she showed me who I could be. And that, I knew, was a love worth keeping.